Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first masterclass in the program of our Design Week 2021 in Brunei Darussalam. And we are here today with Peter Gould, where he's going to make a presentation on my masterclass with the title "Seeking the Art of Design: Design as a Spiritual Practice." Let me introduce to you Peter Gould first. Peter Gould leads a strategic design studio based in Sydney, in Dubai, and in Jakarta. The Gould Studio advocates for what is coined as art-centered design, with the purpose to create meaningful brands, cross-cultural understanding, and spiritually inspired positive change. It has been active for more than 20 years in having clients such as the United Nations, Greenpeace, Dubai Culture, in a diverse portfolio with varied government projects. He is a recipient of the Stanford Certificate of Innovation and Entrepreneurship and has lectured design thinking at the University of Technology in Sydney. Peter Gould has also been known by establishing a community project that is called the Creative Ummah, that was established a couple of years ago to inspire Muslim entrepreneurs and that have creativity at their core. For our design week, Peter Gould is going to be presenting on seeking the art of design, design as a spiritual practice. Thank you, Peter, for being with us and accepting our invitation for this masterclass, and welcome to Brunei.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Ray, and assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. And thank you so much for making the time, everyone. It's such a blessing, really, that we have this moment together. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'd love to learn more about each of you and make this session very interactive and beneficial. Would love to hear more about each of you in the chat as well. So feel free to light that up with any questions as we go. And let's make this session one that is practical, one that is enjoyable, and inshallah something that we can learn to apply in our lives, in our paths, in our careers. So I'll be talking about seeking the heart of design, and this concept I've been exploring over the last 15, 20 years, and this idea of exploring design as a spiritual practice. So we'll be having a look at what that could mean and giving some examples of that. So firstly, just thank you again, and very grateful to be part of this excellent series of programs, masterclasses. I was also grateful to be on the jury for the Design Awards and to see some of the excellent work that's being produced and shared and really flourishing across Brunei and beyond. So thank you all for making the time. Feel free, any of you, to share anything in the chat as we go, and I'd love to hear a little more about each of you, maybe what you're working on and anything you want to use there. But I'll share a little bit as for the first part of the format of this session, and then we can have a bit of a group discussion as well later with Rui helping. So Bismillah, we'll begin. Before we dive too deep into the journey together, I thought let's actually just take a moment to refresh our intention and take a breath, maybe a sip of water, and just enjoy and appreciate the moment that we have right now together globally, in a time when there's a lot of difficulty, there's a lot of challenge, but we've been gifted this time together, and what a precious moment it is, and what a privilege and a blessing for all of us that we have the inspiration and interest in design and spirituality, and we've been gifted with design skills and curiosity and imagination, and just appreciating that what role we might play in this journey ahead, in a world that needs help. It needs our design talents, our good intentions, and a lot of our collaboration wherever we might live and whatever our path might be. So just taking a moment to have a breath. Maybe you've probably had already a busy day, a few hours before arriving to this moment, lots of programs. This is just a second we can take to just have a breath and just be present with one another and make intention to learn together over the next hour or so. But I would like to remind us, I want it to be a practical and informative and interactive session. So I'd love to hear from any of you. And I can see on the call here, I'm just randomly going to pick, we've got Rahman, we've got Wahida, Iza, we've got Atika, We've got Safwan, Zara, Abu Shah, Idris, Danish, Iman, Asia, all of you, and anyone that I didn't mention, please join in and be interactive as you like as we go along. So I'm going to begin with a little bit of a story. And just to take you back, a younger version of me, you can see here, this is actually from about 15 years ago when I was in Lebanon. I was a bit of a seeker of sorts. I was on a journey to understand Islam from some of the traditional places it had flourished early. And I spent some time around parts of, the older cities in the Middle East, and this is in Beirut. But I was trying to learn Arabic. I was trying to understand Islam a little from a different perspective of where I'd first seen it and experienced in Australia, where I'd grown up. And when I was first exploring these spiritual matters, and I had done a university. Had done a degree, Bachelor of Design here in Sydney. I had already started freelancing graphic design and getting my first clients, but I was very curious. I basically saved up any freelancing money that I had earned and started flying and traveling and spending time studying and living wherever I could to understand the traditional aspects of Islamic design and trying to understand what that is. So here, one of the first places that left a significant impression on me, alhamdulillah, was in Granada, in Spain, in Andalusia, southern Spain. And one can't help but walk around a space like this and feel inspired and marvel at the beautiful flowing fountains and courtyards and the gardens, and have have an experience of awe and think about the majesty and the beauty of what this place was, and why it still endures to invite so many people, millions of people every year. And I started exploring different cities, and this is in Morocco. And I was just, as a graphic designer in particular, quite impressed and really mesmerized by beautiful Islamic tiling and mosaics. Here you see the Zalij tiling, the color palettes, this flowing Maghrebi, Andalusi style scripts. And although this being centuries old, this feeling very fresh and very visually, it invites one to contemplate, to think, and you can't help but have a bit of a transformative experience when you walk around these kinds of traditional spaces. And I was curious to think about what is the mindset of the designers, of the architects, these traditions that had been developed over by Islam, inspired by faith, but in these very beautiful, expressive, vibrant ways, in patterns, in mosaics, and some of them with a very deep richness of meaning and symbolism. And even if those not familiar necessarily with the faith or tradition, but having this there's a certain majesty that one feels when they walk into these spaces. So I spent around a month in Morocco exploring and learning Arabic, and just being immersed in environments that were centuries old. And the feeling of these spaces is that your heart is affected. There is a design intent that moves your state, where you feel, just walking around and seeing this kind of traditional application and understanding the craft of design, is that it affects the heart. And I asked one of my teachers about this, Dr. Abdullah Rothman, someone I've befriended in recent years, who's the director at Cambridge Muslim College. And he captured, I think, beautifully and succinctly. He said it wasn't just for physical beauty. The design was supposed to affect the state of people's hearts. And this could be applied across a range of places and spaces you might visit, or objects you might interact with. But we very clearly, there'd been centuries of this tradition of this link between spirituality and the language of the visual and the language of design. And I'm talking a lot about architecture here, but you can apply those to many of the traditional Islamic applications of what you might call design in calligraphy, in mosaic tiling, and in the design of the space. There was Jerusalem. I spent some time, and here in particular, I loved in Turkey. So this is in Konya. This is where Jalaluddin Rumi, the great scholar and poet and thinker, lies. And not just so much the space and the beautiful calligraphy, but the poetry that and the words and his wisdom that 8 centuries later make him the most popular poet in America is a testament to the richness and the beauty and the tradition of Islamic faith and this creative expression that speaks to us today. It's got a timeless quality. And I love this particular excerpt from the Mathnavi. In this case, it's paraphrased a little, I think, from the original Farsi, but it's something that speaks to us today. When you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. And I think this is something that all of us can relate to. It's a very human experience that you're in that moment, you feel that flow. And a lot of people will report talking about flow, and studies have been done on these flow states. And you can really identify this sense of you're in this mode, almost like you're channeling this creative this creative activity that you might be doing. So especially people in the design profession, in different creative disciplines, you have these moments where you feel that something a little bit beyond you. It's not just a technical work you're doing. You're not just operating a Mac, but there's something deeper happening. And I think that warrants a bit of an exploration in perhaps the spiritual link in these conversations that we need to lean into. Just sharing a little more, I spent some time in Syria, and again, moved by the layers of history and the spaces and the feeling that creates in the heart. Walking around, this is a building on the outskirts of Damascus, and just looking again, it's a combination of the quality of the craftsmanship, the creative expression, the vibrancy, the visual language here, the florals, that beautiful, majestic calligraphy. The effect of these compositions, is quite profound. And the uniting link here in all of these that I was impressed by is that it does invite one to think and contemplate and consider, to reflect and to remember. And I might think of this type of design as design for remembrance, design for contemplation. And this is someone who had grown up in a tradition of design being largely for advertising or product design or fashion or video game design. I was amazed by visiting these spaces and feeling this is designed for my heart, and it's something that you feel. And even just abroad, when I was visiting Beijing, even the different design language and application here of the basmala. So you see Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in the Sunni, Khat Sunni kind of style, very flowing, but the timeless message and meaning of that expressed in a way. One of my teachers explained, he was paraphrasing a West African scholar, and said that Islam to him was like a clear, pure water flowing around the world, and it reflects the colors of the bedrock upon which it flowed. Meaning, if it went over a particular place in China here, it reflects those cultural colors, and that expression comes through. And here, just a very old mosque from the Nije Mosque, but I'm loving the design language. They're very striking and very visibly Chinese, but with that timeless message and the Shahada you see. There's a book that I think describes this well that I found, particularly to the English speaker myself, that it uses language in a way that I think is helpful for us when we're trying to understand the right vocabulary, the right spiritual vocabulary. And it's someone that I've interviewed and spoken to, Kabir Helminski, and he says it goes by many names: awakening, recollection, mindfulness, remembering, dhikr, and by no name at all. This awakened state of consciousness opens us to awe and wonder. It adds further dimensions to being in this world. Beyond that narrow band of awareness that has come to be accepted as the conventional state of consciousness is a faculty that is the master key to unlocking our latent human potential. And if we just reflect on that, I think for designers, for creative practitioners, for people thinking about producing work, this is very important understanding that there is a deeper layer that we want to help access and be connected to, that was traditionally understood, that I think we can recover or reawaken in ourselves to really align our creative aspirations with our this spiritual consciousness. And some of the other beautiful examples I found in my travels and studies, that I think really capture this well. This is in Bahrain. You can see in a stained glass application, but I love that this was on the mosque around in Bahrain where I visited, and in Beit al-Quran. And again, that expressive creative language that is, it's very striking example of these elements aligning. This is actually Quran that alhamdulillah I was able to purchase while I was in Damascus, and it's about at least 200 years old. And what's phenomenal about the experience of this, and alhamdulillah the shopkeeper I think detected this when I walked in, was there's something very profound and majestic about this, this ancient manuscript that it has its wisdoms, it has its guidance in the words, but there's something also powerful about the beauty of the paper, of the binding, and of when you see other Qurans that are illuminated, that manuscript. Again, it brings this design intent of beauty and knowledge and this spiritual consciousness into the design process that was traditionally understood. So I asked one of my teachers about this, and his name's Dr. Samir Mahmoud, and he explains that I think very well. He says, we have to make conscious today what had been unconscious for a very long time. We have to recover it in a sense. So what Samir is talking about here is that if you look at the calligraphers or the architects or designers, if you like, of past, from this faith tradition, there's this understanding, there's this spiritual alignment that was there as part of the culture, of the identity, of the upbringing, of the there was this alignment. It was unconscious because it had just been directly a part of that life and how that person lives and thinks. And today, if you think about it, many of us, and definitely for myself, when I was studying in design and entrepreneurship, and studies in professional creative practice, it felt very much one track over here. And in my spiritual studies, spending time, learning Quran or learning from teachers or learning about prophetic guidance, was a different path. And it felt there was very little content, aligning the two. And yet day to day, it brought me to these many questions of how do you think about these two things together? And what that led to was a bit of a journey in trying to seek and understand what I call design with heart, or seeking this idea of how do we think about these two parts together, particularly today in contemporary times. And I made this very simplified idea of thinking about these questions, is that on one hand, we want to design for, and in our own lives, have worldly impact. We need financial sustainability. We need to, have a place for ourselves and our families, and a level of material comfort that you would like to have for your families and your loved ones. But on the other hand, from our teachings and from our guidance, we know that we have spiritual aspirations. There's a deep purpose that are here, and people have different paths to this place. For me, it was Islam, and finding my spiritual alignment on that path. But this inner world, this awareness, is there's an inner life that we each have. And people have different names for different languages, but and ultimately you want to wake up with a tranquil heart. you would like to have more often than not in your life this tranquility, this contentment, or this acceptance. So from a designer point of view, this application of questioning, but how do you bring these two things together, for me became what is still today something I'm trying to resolve and answer. And I don't think I've arrived specifically at answers, but what I've tried to do, inshallah, with the help of others and teachers, is understand how to bring the right questions, so that when we're making decisions, when we're thinking about the projects we're designing, the clients we're trying to seek, the impact we're trying to have. How do we consider these things together in an integrated or aligned way, and not as two completely separate things? So if you're talking about launching a product, building a startup, marketing to something, developing a brand identity, helping some corporate giant with their new product, why should that be completely detached from our spiritual path, where we think about our prayer and our dhikr and the way we want to help others? These two things we need, I feel we have a responsibility to bring these questions in a more aligned way. And so what that resulted in is a series of what I call heart-centered design aspirations or principles. So I'm going to talk through those now, these 6 that I would consider to be, or propose to be, at the heart of design. Now, these are things that are very well understood. These words specifically, any Muslim in the world will know these terms, but we don't necessarily actively integrate them into our design process or our creative activities consciously. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. The first one is niyyah, thinking about intentionality. So with our niyyah, it's a word that many of us will be familiar with, but it's, what is really what's if we're being very honest with ourselves, what is the real purpose of this project? And trying to think through the why first, and being very conscious of that. So seeking that clarity of purpose and understanding design in a more holistic way, not simply for financial growth, for acquiring users, for capturing attention, for stealing people's dopamine. Like, what are we really trying to do here? Are we thinking about that person's spiritual well-being or their state? What state are we hoping to help them achieve? Are we thinking about them in a holistic way, rather than just simply customers, users, and sources of money? Let's think about them more thoughtfully and intentionally. And so creating work that has that approach, that inspires, informs, and respects our audiences and our customers, not pressure them, not rush them, not addict them. Which is kind of, it feels very simple to say it this way, but if you look at a lot of the brands we might interact with on a daily or weekly basis, the apps we use, the kind of advertising, we experience 6,000 to 8,000 messages a day. There's 10 to 20,000 new products launched at us every year. A supermarket, a grocery store will have 40,000 brands on a shelf. Do you think the design teams or the corporations behind them are thinking about our personal spiritual well-being? It's not my place to say, but we have that obligation for our own design aspirations and projects, I believe. The second one is ikhlas, so doing things with integrity and sincerity. Again, it feels like it should be implicit, it should be implied, but you look at a lot of design that exists that a lot of us experience, especially those as parents. YouTube, or someone asked the CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, what's your biggest competition? Who's your biggest competitor? This is about 3 years ago. And he said, our biggest competitor for Netflix is sleep, right? So it wasn't another platform. It was, we're keeping people more awake with our content. I don't think that's a very responsible thing, but it's accurate, I think. We're all a little guilty of that. So, but what we design, are we designing with ikhlas? Are we designing with integrity? Are we aware that if we're going to make another 10% of the population a little more sleepy the next day, we should claim some ownership over that. Designers can be better gatekeepers, I think, in some of the projects we're involved with. And trying to really, I think, again, think of design and what we're creating or hope to be part of as illuminating hearts, empower livelihoods, and transform communities. It's not simply just to sell things and grow valuations for our startups to be acquired and sold. There's a richness to our practice that that was there traditionally that we can recover. And this last one, it's a little more of a personal one, and maybe not everyone will aspire for that, but is to to remind and reconnect our audiences or our users or our customers with the divine beauty and artistic perfection in creation. So really design for remembrance, if you like, rather than design for distraction. And of course, ahsan, beauty, bringing quality, bringing a well-considered execution of design in all aspects, and thinking through not just how it looks and how it functions, but your company, your team culture, your labor practices, your policies, trying to bring beauty into that and excellence and a love into what you're creating. This results in this can result in something that might really profoundly resonate with someone's journey. And you might find that trying to aspire for ahsan and actively thinking about that can open some better questions into what you're making. It helps us reflect the Asma al-Husna, thinking about which of God's names and attributes we're actually trying to help manifest through our product. One of the projects I was just actually doing workshop on a little earlier today is actually in Brunei. We were thinking about the name Anur and how might our design project try to capture or express or manifest that attribute of Anur. Now, I'm not ever claiming that we can do that, but at least by asking the question, it might open up our thinking completely to what does that mean? And I think as designers, we should be asking better questions, especially at a time of global hardship and transformational opportunity. And I've also recommended to others Rida, this idea of contentment and gratitude. So instead of this, hustle culture that exists in a lot of entrepreneurship is crushing competition and dominating and very cutthroat competition. Your idea has to be incredible to be and has to be executed well. It has to be done with love and excellence and a sound, sustainable business plan that adapts and learns all the time. But it's also accepting that a lot of its success is out of your hands, and that being in a state of humility if we get success, but being grateful of that, and detaching it as knowing that it's a gift to you, that you can't really claim that you did that. There's a lot of things, that are out of your hands that result. So being contentment, and at the same time, if things don't go to plan, if you had setbacks and challenges, if your idea flops, if people don't like it, if it doesn't work, all the things that were meant to happen don't work, but taking that as wisdom and learning. In the Quran, it'll be, so having know that there is that difficulty and applying that in design practice as well, which is kind of good in prototyping, iterating anyway, that that you're always learning. And just cultivating this awe and wonder at the majesty and the design of the universe. Look to the stars, look to nature, and you will find the most phenomenal design language that can inspire and has done for centuries and millennia, what design could be. And amana, thinking of our design skills, talents, opportunities as an amana, as a gift, a trust to us. It is not for us to just claim success in this way. The spiritual practitioner sees these opportunities we've been given, these gifts, these talent, our Adobe subscription, our coffee, our Wi-Fi, our, university, opportunities. They're gifts to us. And then it becomes an amana. Well, what are we doing with those things? Are we just trying to sell more stuff? Are we just trying to make a name for ourselves? Or are we trying to do something meaningful in the world? And some of those things go together. I'm not against people having great, successful, fantastically well-known brands, but it's just knowing that it's a trust to us, and we should use that design capacity, capability, and imagination to make things that are beautiful in the world and meaningful for lives. Another way is it helps us reframe challenges. So there's many global challenges today, and design enables us to reframe those challenges as design problems to be solved. So rather than just, the world's really difficult and messed up right now, the designer mindset, the design thinking approach enables us to reframe those as design challenges to be solved. And bringing in our design thinking mindset, how might we, enables us. So it's really a trust enabled to us. And the last principle or design aspiration is, barakah, knowing that blessings play an incredible role in the success of what our endeavor might be. And it's a belief that we can have that there's an abundance of opportunities. There's incredible, there's limitless, potential for what positive change could happen. And it's having an optimistic mindset, but framing that in a very long-term way. So having this far-reaching understanding of success, what you're building today, guys, people on this call, people watching and recording, you have an idea for a thing. It's an app, it's a product, it's a brand, it's some graphic, it's, the real result of that might take 50 years. You might set in motion a number of things that trigger and open and help, but really it's beyond your life as to what that actually, it might impact someone in the future. That's having this baraka mindset, as my friend Muhammad Faris would call it, is knowing that success is a long-term view, and it's not just simply about building your own personal wealth or getting that name or building your following. There's a richer holistic view of success that I think that would do us well as a design profession, and knowing that and embracing this idea of co-opetition that I use instead of competition. So there's other designers, there's other companies, there's plenty of other products in the space. Let's be co-opetition. Let's not just compete each other out. Let's work together. Together we are stronger. So summarizing a number of those things, I've framed that as what I call heart-centered design. So as a quick kind of recap there, it's seeking alignment with spiritual aspirations. It's reframing project success in more holistic ways. It's elevating our questions towards a deeper purpose. What are we really trying to do through our design intentions and efforts? It's acknowledging the role of blessings and outcomes, that things are beyond us, that we can't claim or pretend to own the outcomes, and sometimes detaching from success in the way we would like. It values intentions and process over very firm objectives. So it's being, it's putting in, working, it's having that gardener mindset, as my friend Muhammad would say, rather than, we are doing it, we're owning it. It's planting the seeds, doing right, and knowing that over time, those results will flourish, inshallah. It's embracing inspiration as a gift and talent as a trust. It's encouraging us to think of our projects as transformative, and not just transactional. So, as one of my teachers put it, it's like, well, we might be working on a design project, but really it's working on us. That is frustrations when it breaks, the code doesn't work, the printer gets it right, it doesn't get it right, something goes wrong. It's teaching us patience, it's teaching us hikmah, we're learning through our design efforts. So it's not simple transactional, it's really a journey we're on, and it can be over many years. And it invites to us a consciousness and a spiritual intelligence to what we're doing. And this is a heart-centered design approach. Now, I liked how one of my teachers put it here. So one of my mentors, Maria Judith, she's an author. She had a very successful design practice for many years and sold it to Facebook in around 2013. And she just reminds us very simply, design is a noun, it's a verb, and it's a mindset. But this is the important part here, just a reminder for us all, is that we're best served to think about using its tools for solving problems in service to people. So fundamentally, it's about people. Design is really, I think, about people. And all of what we just spoke about is how do we translate that to being in service of people. So I'm going to just go through a couple of examples of how I've personally tried to think about these questions and apply it. So alhamdulillah, I have two daughters, and when they're a little bit younger, I was thinking about these questions as how might I inspire and empower them and their friends and many other parents, looking at what they're playing with, looking at what their kind of content they have access to. And in particular, this one, how do I promote positive, culturally diverse Muslim identity through play? And what we came up with over about a course of a year as a brand and a product series we called and launched called Salam Sisters. So I'm going to just share that. Hopefully the video will play. Let's see if this is going to come up. Let's have a look here.
We're dreamers.
Working okay?
Doers. Makers. Believers. We set out goals and achieve them through hard work, passion, strength, and support from our best friends. We stick together, be the best we can be, and make the changes we want to see.
So the Salam Sisters was journey really started with the intention and the questions around how do we inspire, how do we empower, how do we make relevant, culturally relevant creative experiences that our young people would like to play and parents would like to have. We didn't start with the question of like, how do we get a doll and put a scarf on it and make money? Because that would have failed and it would have resulted in a very different product. Instead, we went through a journey of working, spending time with children, with parents, going through the process of creating handmade custom faces that authentically represented the diversity that we were, that I had seen, people that looked like my friends and people I knew and people that we could not find in the existing brands from Disney and Mattel and Hasbro that just, had generic faces. And we could have gone to a factory and somewhere and just had a generic face, but we didn't. We tried to be authentic to the brand and the message, and that's design principles, trying to do it with ahsan, trying to do it with love, trying to be true to the problem we're trying to solve. And alhamdulillah, it was a beautiful journey. We had a lot of great feedback and success and press and interest in the project. But in particular, if we think about reframing success, one of my favorite bits of feedback that we received along the way was actually from a reverend in the US. And she said, "I'm a Christian clergy woman deeply committed to building multi-religious relationships. The Salam Sisters dolls are the single most creative and innovative idea I've seen to change girls of every faith and no faith and their families' understanding of Islam throughout the world. Salam alaikum." And I love that because it reminded me of the purpose and mission and the intentionality of the brand, which wasn't just about selling and more users and getting. It was really a more holistic understanding of success. So that to me was a good example of what a brand like this can do, but using very contemporary commercial type of package and brand. It's a very commercial sort of application, dolls that you would find in stores, apps that you would download and use. So this is nothing like we could definitely claim in terms of being a beautiful architectural marvel like the Alhambra. It's nothing like that. It's not a beautiful piece of calligraphy that's timeless, but it's trying to borrow from the same principles of trying to aspire for ahsan and relevance in our time. It's trying to do things with the right intentionality. So it's looking at what were those, we talked about those heart-centered design principles. Another one of my favorite examples is a brand we do a lot of work with as a design studio. And the question we had here is, how do we redefine crowdfunding as building an inspired future? So not simply fundraising, but actually thinking how do we get people to commit and invest in projects that are making change. And this other question of how might we showcase and connect the global Muslim heartbeat. And the brand that we work with is called LaunchGood. And I'll just present a little video about that collaboration as well. I'm Peter Gould, and I'm the Chief Design Officer at Gould Studio.
Hi, my name is Omar Hamid. I'm the CDO and co-founder of LaunchGood.
A great partnership starts with really strong alignment of vision, of values, and in this case, we like to think of this partnership as being like-hearted.
One of the beauties of the collaboration between LaunchGood and Gould Studio is the ability to work with a team that understands the market, understands the craft, and is able to work together towards really clear and exciting goals. LaunchGood is not just about the crowdfunding. At our core, it's really about reinstilling a confidence in the global Muslim community.
One of the most beautiful things about being able to work with a brand and a platform like LaunchGood is seeing directly the empowering effect that it has on individuals and communities and families.
And we do this through trying to build products and experiences that help people feel this global heartbeat and understand that we're connected today more than ever before. So as long as we continue working towards that goal and helping people activate that global connection for good, then this is how we know that we're heading towards the right track when it comes to building product.
We've seen when people come together as a crowd and support one another, just selflessly in kindness, that's a really powerful thing to help design for.
So some of the really exciting things that came out of this collaboration was the ability to do really a deep dive on some of the most exciting times of the year for the global Muslim community. This includes Ramadan, Dhul Hijjah.
These seasonal events are really at the peak of demand for LaunchGood's platform. What our team needs to be able to do is, starting many months earlier, to help design and deliver the best possible experience for the users that are coming on board. Now we're talking thousands and thousands of people that start hitting the platform. We need to make sure that the design's smooth, it's enjoyable, it looks beautiful, but it's well crafted and everything kind of works. The partnership with LaunchGood has been an incredible opportunity to let our two teams practice heart-centered design. So really thinking the role of design in a more meaningful way, at how we can really think about not just empowering communities and delivering a great experience on the platform, but how can we really try to connect hearts? How can we look after someone's personal or spiritual well-being? Can design play a role in that? I think it can, and I think at Gould Studio, we're aspiring to do just that.
So when it comes to design, design is so much more than the aesthetic. It's really about the functionality. It's really about how people are engaging and using your products. This collaboration with Gould Studio has been able to help uncover the potentials and opportunities within these products. So we're super excited to see what the next steps are to continue building on the momentum that's already been built.
So I really appreciate the opportunity so much. It's been a great partnership, and I feel like there's an incredible future ahead with our two teams working together.
Just keep your eyes out because LaunchGood and Gould Studio, I think, are going places.
So LaunchGood, they've had really an amazing journey through their brand since we started working with them when they were maybe less than 10 people. Now they're about 130 employees, I think, and have reached over $200 million in crowdfunding raised. So an example of a successful startup that's built on these heart-centered design principles. So I want to look at a bit more closely is how do we take these and be a bit more granular around, well, how do we bring them to life? You know, we know about these concepts. A lot of Muslims in particular are familiar with those words, and any kind of designer or will be aware of, the idea of craft and working sincerely. But how do we apply these more strategically day to day in the tools that we use? So I've been exploring, experimenting, and developing some specific processes, but at a high level, you can really apply these directly. At the very least, it opens, again, a potential for better questions. So even taking some of those words, looking at, well, how does barakah apply to our team culture and alignment? How do we bring ikhlas into our workflow and operations? How do we bring this concept of law or amana into our design leadership and our design values and principles? Or you can be very specific and take something like OKRs, objectives and key results, that are used by many tech companies to drive their companies forward, and bringing these spiritual aspirations or principles into those will just at least result in some great questions and discussions around those. So if we take design thinking, I know a number of you would have studied this and apply it, which is a certain process or a set of approaches that are really to make sure we're working on the right problem, understanding the audience, understanding the problem first, and reframing the brief to be about that problem. And if we bring in some of those heart-centered aspirations, it's bringing in more of those spiritual perspectives and qualities into our intention. So how might our brand help foster deep empathy in the world? Or how might our app encourage personal growth or spiritual awareness? Asking those questions can help you lead to maybe some other design directions and considerations. Now, I asked someone I befriended in Dubai, where I was based for a couple of years, and she works at IDEO Dubai. She's really the founder of the IDEO Dubai, and she says, and reminds us here, design's an act of power and empowerment, a refusal to simply accept the world as it is and fiercely reimagine it as it could be. So I love that this brings out more of a social justice and activism, bringing our faith here more directly in alignment with the change that we need to make in the world. And of course, there's many examples of this, but the one I was going to give in this context was a task. So Greenpeace came to us and said, we know that we need to address Muslim audiences more directly, but in different locations in Southeast Asia, in across the MENA region, North Africa. How do we do that? So we start with trying to find the right questions here. So how might we encourage Muslims to take climate action? But in particular, how might we uniquely engage the digital native generation of Muslims? So what we came up with, spending time with researching, trying to understand the problem and the people in those audiences, of which are very diverse, but there are common threads. One of those threads being faith and this awareness of the amana of the environment, or khilafa, that we're supposed to be stewards of the environment. But how do we do that in a way that's actually fun and engaging and cool and useful, and not another lecture or a khutbah or a book on a shelf? We wanted to make it something gamified, fun. So we came up with a concept that Hamza was successful, and it was a campaign, but at the heart of the campaign was a gamified interactive mobile experience, so anyone could play. So I'll just show a short video on that. So the experience there was asking the right questions rather than just jumping straight to the brief, trying to understand the people, the context, the problem, and making something that was fun, engaging, and something that people actually want to use, that was novel and new. So it's understanding both the design in the context and the technical application that's needed to make that work, but understanding what is that spiritual motivator that the audiences might have, or at least a portion of them. So that's another example that I wanted to share. So moving to just another couple of ways of thinking about this, and how do we think directly and more strategically about design tools. So one other way that I've helped use this and apply Alhamdulillah with some success is what I call the heart-centered design canvas. So a number of you might be familiar with the lean canvas or the business model canvas. You might have used it in some of your projects or startups. The heart-centered design canvas is reimagining that in a just really shifting some of the language. So again, the idea is to bring in a different set of spiritual perspectives, or elevate our questions. So traditionally, this business model canvas talks about users. It talks about revenue models, and that's important and needs to be done in for, I think, sound business planning. But in parallel with that, you could consider this as a companion canvas. And instead of just thinking of audiences or users, we could think of communities that we're serving. And instead of just the products and services we're giving to them, we could think about how are we transforming their state? What transformation are we trying to facilitate for that community? Again, it may not. We know it's not entirely in our hands, and it might be a little too ambitious to think that we could really do that. But why not ask the question, and why not have that intentionality to help transform someone's heart through what we're creating? Why not? This has happened in the past, in centuries gone by. Can we use the same values and aspirations to inform and inspire our own creative practice and what we're building, making, designing, and not underestimating the simple power and potential of an app that you're making, or some product you're thinking about? You really could touch someone's life and emotionally open their heart through what you're creating. So it's also a big amana, because we can sometimes get it the wrong way, but if we get it the right way. So using this tool is a way of mapping that out. So it's just in one page. And then another one that I've put here is just values. What design values are we bringing into this project, and what guidance or sources of wisdom we want to attach to this project? And putting your personal intentions into the business model from the beginning, I think is helpful. So instead of just making about numbers, users, growth, and sales, it's trying to bring in a more holistic understanding of your hopes and aspirations for this business or project that you're making. And lastly, I'm going to come to a couple more examples. So one of my teachers, Tamara Gray in the US, she has a lot of wonderful content and examples of programs. She's designed culturally relevant programs in the US and across many parts of the world now. And she says and reminds us, if we don't recognize the speed of society and don't design for the place people are, we'll lose them. So I was interviewing about that. And I want to just give one example that I'm currently working on. It's still in prototype phase, is thinking directly about one of the most popular channels that people experience content in, that's through video gaming, through different gaming platforms. So I've been asking this question for some time. How might we encourage exploration of spiritual concepts through gaming? And how do we invite gamers to consciously reflect on spiritual concepts? Why do these have to be so far apart? And so we've been developing a game and working on some prototypes where, it is inshallah an engaging, interactive, compelling experience, but it's thinking about the role of spirituality in our lives and inviting people to think about khayal, this idea of spiritual imagination. And this is based on the idea of one of my teachers related to the hadith, where, it's, I believe it's the hadith, where if you worship God as if you see God, but if you don't, know that he sees you. And that's this idea of ahsan, of having this purity of intention. And the word being as if you see God, right? And that's not imagination in the form that we think of God in a certain form, but using a khayal, your spiritual imagination with your heart to imagine, this spiritual imagination of what we're praying to. And I think this is a powerful spiritual concept that can be applied to design as well. Khayal, this idea of spiritual imagination, it's a new paradigm even for thinking about design. I wouldn't call it new. I would say it's actually a very old one, but unlocking that in our toolkit as designers, exploring this idea of khayal. So the game itself is working through some of these ideas and concepts as a player in a fun way. Lastly, I'm going to leave you just a little bit of advice from one of my favorite books on the subject. So Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art is a classic that I think should be on the shelf or desk of every professional creative or aspiring designer. And Stephen says, creative work is not a selfish act or a bid for attention on the part of the actor. It's a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got. So it's a really reminder to myself and all of you listening and watching in, is that we have these gifts and opportunities and talents and tools. Don't be shy of trying to use them. Use them. You've been given them, and in fact, if you hold them back, maybe you're withholding on some benefits. Some people might, they might not otherwise receive if you don't start working on your idea. You might benefit a lot of hearts, inspire a lot of people, make change in that community, but you have to act and you have to have that and do that with the right intention and work through with that spiritual perspective as a way to guide, inshallah. So I just wanted to wrap there. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of these ideas, and just to share again that I'm on a path of discovery, of learning, of questioning, and have many years, I think, of understanding to still benefit from in the future.